I'm Darrell Jones with Mississippi State University Extension Service, and my presentation today will be about developing a business plan for your natural resource enterprise, having paying clients on your property to hunt through either a outfitter business or a hunting lease, fishing opportunities, rural accommodations, bed and breakfast, farm tours, agritourism. So having paying clients on your property and thinking about your business and thinking through the business model is an important part of developing a business plan. First, I'm going to talk about recreational access on private lands in Mississippi and other states. And this NRE program that I manage, I enjoy doing landowner trainings through workshops and online seminars like this one to talk about hunting recreation, fishing, watching of wildlife, riding horses, and again, being on property with farm tours, agri-tainment, and then rural accommodations like bed and breakfast opportunity to get people out on your farm, on your property, and enjoy natural vistas, natural scenery, and looking at wildlife and other activities. Outdoor recreation in the U.S. is big business. The last survey conducted by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with the U.S. Department of Interior, it showed that there are 104 million participants in the U.S. spending $157 billion annually. And a lot of that is in rural landscapes in the U.S., and part of that is on private lands like you own, like we're talking about today in this presentation. And so there's money spent all over the country in doing these activities. And again, there's users looking for opportunities, places to go. I go pheasant hunting every year, typically in South Dakota, and developed a good friendship with a farmer in South Dakota, and I pay him to stay at his house and then hunt pheasants behind my gun dogs, which is a big fun trip for me. And it's developed a friendship with this farmer, and he uses that funding, that the money that I spend with him, to turn back into his property to make it more valuable for wildlife and make it more valuable for people to come. So this is big business in the U.S. Hunting is about $26 billion annually. Fishing is almost $50 billion, and then watching of wildlife continues to grow, is $76 billion. Narrow it down to a regional overview: outdoor recreation, wildlife-related recreation in the Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi region, ArkLaMiss. Fishing's about 2 million anglers fish annually, spending $1.7 billion. Hunting, about 1 million hunters, and they spend almost $2 billion annually. And then people that wildlife watch, bird watch, and go to rural accommodations to see pretty scenery, over 2 million participants spending over $1 billion. So about $4.6 billion in ArkLaMiss on an annual basis. So that's real compatible income that goes well with farming, timber production, and land ownership. Helps make ends meet, so to speak, for landowners. And landowners that particularly drill down and do this as a business, as their primary income source, they can do real well. So it can be a primary income driver. Scoping down a little bit more into Mississippi, what does it mean for Mississippi? An agrarian state with about 3 million in population, a little under that, 2.8, 2.9 million in population. Annual expenditures in Mississippi that relate to economic impact. So you can take what they spend and then look at the economic impact that produces through economic models. Hunting means about $1.2 billion annually in economic impact to the state of Mississippi. So that's real economic impact, tremendous potential, and real dollars spent and impact from recreational hunting, wildlife-related hunting in Mississippi. Fishing is about $700 million economic impact. People coming and in-state residents watching wildlife spend about 800, or economic impact of $800 million on an annual basis, for an overall impact of almost $3 billion, producing over 70,000 jobs. And this is continuing to increase almost on an annual basis. So the punchline of all this, some of this recreation, a good percentage of it's going on private land, some's on public land on national wildlife refuges, state wildlife management areas. People spend money to do that. I do that. But a large chunk of this income revenues are being spent on private lands, and some of that money is being paid to private landowners. So again, the potential for business opportunities here with outdoor recreation related to wildlife. People charge, I get this question a lot on leasing land for hunting. That can be a wide range. And several years ago in Mississippi, did a pricing schedule or survey with landowners to see what they charge per acre per year on hunting on land that they lease for recreational hunting. And the range was from $5 an acre to $150 an acre. Some of those larger monies, that's probably waterfowl hunting in our Mississippi Delta, where people spend a lot of money on a small acreage block where waterfowl historically come or habituated to come to that property, and so they're good duck holes. So they lease out opportunities or charge for people to duck hunt. That's probably those top end prices. In that survey, better properties that were sold for wildlife recreation, some of those in the state of Mississippi, we were asking Federal Land Bank and other lenders what people were paying for property. So we're surveying the banks on their loan portfolios on recreational properties. And a minority, over 100, about 120 some odd properties were being leased in the past. What did those lease rates of those better properties with good timber management, a large hardwood forest component to those properties, they took care of their water resources, rivers and streams and ponds on the property, just did the things with wildlife habitat management that enhanced the habitat for wildlife. That's what we're talking about with these properties that Federal Land Bank and other banks financed. When people buying property, those properties were leasing $21 an acre. So better properties earn more. As a comparison, 16th section lands in Mississippi that are leased and revenues go to local school boards, on average, those were about $7 to $11 per acre per year. And there were some higher end tracts that got more money than that. But some of these lands, for example, have been used intensively by lessees to farm or to cut timber on, or they cut timber on the property just to go to local schools. So they've been high graded from a timber standpoint. They're not as, those kind of properties aren't as good for wildlife, but even those were leasing, for $10 an acre. So that's the bottom end of the scale to a large degree. So this scale is rising upward over time. We don't know what this COVID-19 pandemic will do to people recreating, but probably my guess would be outdoor recreation, you're getting away from other people. So I still see these monies being spent for people to get away, and a lot of that's going toward landowners. Now, the economic depression from the pandemic, that could affect some pricing, but hopefully this viral outbreak is something we'll get over. But these prices are good. I get asked all the time, how do I price my lease? Well, I'm giving you some numbers there to look at. At least if I'm leasing land, get my land taxes. Whatever I'm getting from a land tax, that needs to be the bottom end of what I'm charging per acre. And then you can look at other leases in your area to see what they're charging for, what those are earning, and you can gauge on what you need to charge for yours based on some of that. And then I get the question, where do I go to get that? On the 16th section lands in Mississippi, the Mississippi Secretary of State's office has a website where all those 16th section lands, those are public lands that are being leased. And so they put those on the website, and they put out for bid basis when they come up for a hunting lease renewal. So you can access that database through the Secretary of State's office and look at what 16 section lands in your county in Mississippi are going for. So that's another way you can look at your lease. And in separating leases, I always tell people, if you're leasing for deer hunting in the fall, you can turn around and lease for your turkey hunting rights in the spring and separate those leases. Maybe two different groups, two different individuals. But if you lump it all together, you're going to get one sum. But if you separate it, chances are you're going to get more money overall per acre on your property. So think about doing things like that. I think it's wise. Angling, like we talked about, you saw the expenditures; those are good. Fishing, and then charter boat operations on our Mississippi Gulf Coast and in the Gulf of Mexico and our sister states as well is quite popular. But fishing is growing in demand, and on private lands, fishing, angling, if you've got impoundments, ponds, lakes, river access, this can be conducted quite compatibly with a fee hunting operation, a hunting lease, or an outfitter type business. Management of your fisheries resources and your impoundments are important, and Extension Service can help you with that. We have expertise that can help you, and in other states as well with our sister land grant extension services and universities. If you offer amenities like boats and baits and rural accommodations, the pricing can go up. In terms of charter boat excursions, this is an older survey, which was done several years ago. But the charter boat industry is about $150 million per year in economic impact to the state of Mississippi. And again, that number is somewhat dated; it may be higher now. So fishing continues to be popular. Horse trail riding, about 4 million horses owned for pleasure. Public land managers are typically downsizing with budgets, so wildlife management areas with the state or federal lands like national forest and wildlife refuges, they have monies to do some of their land management, but they're typically those dollars are stretched, and so there's a good opportunity, for example, for area landowners around public lands and with refuge managers, with national forest managers, to hook up with them to offer horse trail riding on your private lands adjacent to a national forest, but then they can also ride on the national forest after they check local rules. So that's just something I've seen landowners do. These landowners offer hookups to the horse trailers. A lot of times the riders will camp in their trailers, or they provide lodging for the riders. And liability obviously can be something of consideration with horse trail riding. Oftentimes landowners will allow the riders, they bring their own horses. So if you don't provide horses, that reduces your liability potential on the property when they're riding their own horse, for example. So, but there are ways around, we don't talk about liability, but there's ways around making your property safer, to make it safer, and therefore reduce liability for horse trail riding and some of these other opportunities as well. Birding, wildlife watching, like I showed earlier, continues to increase. About a quarter of Americans participate, spend over $30 billion annually. This is just only increasing. This is quite compatible with hunting. Seen landowners that have fee hunting operations that will offer birding in the off-hunting season when migratory birds are coming through, neotropical migrants, and birders will come in and use the same blinds that in the fall earlier they may have been hunting out of, but they use those same blinds to look at wildlife and look at birds, particularly coming to water on the property. So birding is compatible with hunting, and prices can vary depending on what you offer with package arrangements. I've seen landowners that cooperate with National Audubon Society, which is a good way as well to get bird expertise on your property, find out a bird inventory or have a bird list on your property that will entice birders to come and want to see these species. Agritourism or agritainment, this is a fast growing tourism market worldwide and in the U.S. as well. Farm tours, U-pick operations with vegetables and fruits, corn mazes for mostly for kids, children, farmers markets where you're selling produce at a central farmers market location, and family entertainment. Lots of groups like to come to these agritourism destinations. Youth groups are looking for places. School groups are looking for places like this to go. Church groups can be active here, and this is a growing market and will continue to be. Shooting sports, always popular in the United States. Over 20 million shoot recreationally, target shoot. They spend almost $17 billion a year on equipment and travel. Supports a large number of jobs. So shooting sports, this may not be for everyone to offer a sporting clays or rifle range on your property because you don't want the noise, for example. But some people that do this do real well. We've had workshops on destinations like this, and these landowners talk about it. And again, they can be very successful. Other enterprise opportunities like rural accommodations, bed and breakfast. The music of Mississippi is quite steep. Jimmy Rogers started country music from Meridian, the singing brakeman, blues artists from our Mississippi Delta and surrounding states, Elvis Presley from Tupelo, king of rock and roll. So a lot of people come here tied to interest in music and culture as well, with the history of Mississippi in the South and the literary writers. So all this is tied to rural lands, natural beauty of Mississippi. So again, this is something that brings in lots of people to make Mississippi and the South a destination, and other areas of the country as well. Rural appeal is what particularly urbanites are looking for, and a sense of value with family and land are important. In some surveys that I've done in the past looking at what does wildlife-related recreation mean to rural land values, it means a lot. About a third of the value in land in Mississippi is tied to people buying this land for wildlife-related recreation, to hunt, to fish, to have a rural place that they can go and camp and stay in a house, stay in a cabin. So people are looking for these kind of properties. So about a third of the value was tied to outdoor wildlife-related recreation. So it actually was about $654 an acre was due to wildlife recreation. What land types were important? Those were the drivers of this increase in value. Good forest lands with mixed pine hardwood forest, some of our piney woods, particularly in longleaf pine in the central and south Mississippi, were important, and also ag lands, which are primarily more in our delta and our north central counties. These properties, these kind of land covers were important, what people were looking for to buy because of the importance to wildlife, and they could therefore buy it for recreation to hunt on. This is a photograph of a friend in southeast Oregon, Chiloquin, Oregon, at Yamsey Ranch, John Hyde. He actually has a 5,000 acre cow-calf operation. We're fly fishing there on the river that comes through his property. It's called the Williamson River. And again, he raises cattle, but he also is an expert in fly fishing, fly tying, fly casting, and he offers recreation to fly anglers, fly fishermen to come to his property and fish for rainbow trout and brook trout in this river, the smaller river that comes to his property. And they stay on the property in cabin accommodations that he has, and he's booked from April to October. So this goes perfectly with his rural land. It fits well in with the cattle production. You can't see from this photograph, but he has fencing, electric fencing that keeps the cattle out of the river, that makes water quality better and doesn't erode the banks, but has alternative watering holes, ponds for the cows. But all this, again, USDA with the Natural Resources Conservation Service helped him do some of these practices. So his habitat management, land management fit right in with the fly fishing here. And that really, he mentioned to me, it helps us stay on the farm, particularly when beef prices are down. So he's a good poster man for what we're talking about today. So how do we think about a business plan for these kind of NRE businesses? I think it's important to think through this, at least have some type of skeleton plan in place, back of the envelopes. Doesn't have to be 200 pages with appendices. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. At least think through your business model, what I'm going to do for this business, and a written plan makes you think through this, put this on paper, and it helps you get your business started and keep it successful over time. So the role of a business plan is to turn an idea into a written plan of action, and it serves to convince me or you that your business will work. If I go through this analysis and the mental gymnastics, so to speak, of going through this business model and writing a plan, I can convince myself my business will work. Or if I start getting the feeling, hey, this is not going to work for me, that's good to know up front. I'm an OX banker, and if you sense that an idea won't work and you don't start the business, that saves you heartache and loss of money, and that's important. So not starting a business that won't work is a good idea. The business plan will help you think through that, but hopefully your business model will be a good one, and this plan will help you get that business model on, that business plan, so to speak, on rails, gets you started. So it serves as a model for performance and a roadmap to get there. It educates not only yourself, but if you have to borrow a little bit of money from time to time, bankers like to see business plans. As I mentioned, an ex-banker. I like to see that somebody has thought through a process and has a written plan of action, and that makes me feel more comfortable as a lender. And I can actually analyze that plan to see if I think the model is going to work. So that's another attribute of a business plan. It also shows financial feasibility, particularly for myself, to think through if this is going to bring in revenues and income for me and be worth my while. And a plan of action, this business plan, is not static. It's not write it and put it on the shelf and never look at it. It's a roadmap. You go back to it time and time again, and you can flex it. You can change it over time, so it can be flexible over time. I'm going to talk about the sections just generally of a business plan that you would have for your natural resource enterprise. It's good to have for you kind of an executive summary or an overview of the plan, just a very brief, but a brief sketch of your operation, what you're going to be doing. Have a general synopsis of the market that you're going to be getting into with your business, what your management structure of your business is going to be. I'm going to run it with my family, for example. Planned operations, what I'm exactly going to do. Give some overview briefly of the financial projections money I'm going to make. And this summary kind of sets the tone for a project. People that will read your business plan will particularly read the executive summary first. Obviously, it's at the first of the plan, but sometimes that's primarily what they'll read to get a sense of whether this is a viable operation. Next, I need the next section. I want to describe my business, the history of my business, how I came up with this idea, what I've done up to date, my land, how it fits into this business model. Describe the type of industry I'm getting involved with, hunting operation, agritourism. This description serves as kind of an outlook and a basis of projections for my NRE, for my business. talk about here my goals and strategies to put my plan in action to make my business successful. So talking about my goals and strategies will be something that I articulate in this description. This also, the business description, start thinking about your economic and liability risk and how to minimize those risks. And usually when you go through a plan like this, it gives you some ammunition, so to speak, gives you some plans of action to minimize those risks, business economic risk and liability risk. And then it kind of describes the setting of how my business will be successful in this business description part. Let's talk about kind of goals and mission statement. Mission statement is an overarching statement about what my business, my NRE, will be doing. And I'm going to use this as an example, which is what I would do. I love to train gun dogs and love to upland bird hunt, bobwhite quail, grouse, and particularly ringneck pheasant. And I've already mentioned that. So let's say in my model, my mission will be to provide a premium hunting and outdoor experience on quality lands, my property, to a selective range of clientele. So that's my mission. Now, how do I get to my mission? I need to have some goals and objectives to get to that. And one of the things, let's say for hunting operation, is I need to have good wildlife habitat to support the wildlife that I'm going to feature in my business. So a goal would be to have better wildlife habitat, to improve wildlife habitat on my property, to maximize wildlife populations and the aesthetic good looks of my property. How am I going to get to that goal to improve as one goal? And this is an example, a goal to get to better wildlife habitat. Well, one way I've got to have an objective which would be measurable, specific, and tied to time, how to directly achieve that goal. So if I need to have better wildlife habitat, well, I need to have somebody help me, let's say, with a wildlife habitat management plan to increase habitat for bobwhite quail, or in South Dakota, increase habitat, nesting and brood rearing habitat for ringneck pheasants, and on my corn on my farm that I particularly focus on corn production, let's say. So that objective would be to develop and implement a wildlife habitat management plan on the property to improve the wildlife habitat to support my business. So again, a goal is to get somewhere. How are you going to get there? That's through your objective. So think through that for your business. Have at least several goals and then objectives to meet those goals. A very important part of my model and your model should be looking at what I've got in terms of resources available to me. Physical resource inventory is important to go through. Of course, one of the most valuable assets I've got is my land. Land and water are on my property. You know, what kind of acres do I have? What's the current present uses and the types of land cover? And I've got mixed pine hardwoods on the property. I've got some ag fields. I've got some wetlands. I've got ponds. You know, those are the types of lands that I have. That's important to write those down and think of those as a package. And how much of that, all of it or some of it, that I'll operate my NRE on. What buildings that I've got that can support the business, and barns and storage buildings and meeting areas for my hunting clients to come and eat, accommodations that they can stay overnight. These kind of assets are important. It also may show me what I need. I may have to build some things, but hopefully I've got a good bit of this already on the property. What equipment, machinery that I need. Do I have a tractor? Do I have a clipper? Do I have disc, spreaders? These kinds of things, and most farmers would have some of those types of resources. I may need some of that, may not, but if I need it, I need to take an inventory of what I got and what I may have to get. And that helps me think through my business plan. Who am I going to hire? Who's going to work this? Who's going to run it. Am I going to run it? I'm going to need a manager to help me run it. It's going to be a family business. My son and I, or my daughter and I, with my spouse, let's say, who's going to run and work the business? And look at also, if I got to hire people, how am I going to develop that workforce? What's the local mixture for people I can hire? So that's important to think through that early in doing my resources inventory, to look at the assets that I have. Some other things, I'm going to probably have to have insurance. I have insurance now on, say, my farming operation, timber operation. I'm going to need some insurance probably for this NRE as well, and that can be tied with my existing insurance, maybe as an additional policy or rider on my existing policy, or I may have to, if I'm leasing land for hunting, may have to get a lease insurance that I can get through maybe my local vendor or someone else. But think through that so I can cover that as a base, cover that as something I need to do. Farm Bill, I mentioned earlier, your friend in NRCS and USDA particularly has cost share opportunities with Farm Bill to help improve your land management and habitat quality of your property. So take advantage of NRCS. So this is money that's out there, that's every year in the Farm Bill. And if you don't know about Farm Bill, get knowledgeable on that, because that can help you, particularly increasing your cash flow in your business, and particularly in improving your land and wildlife habitat, for example, on your property. Next part of my plan would be to describe my product or service. What exactly am I going to offer? And I mentioned in my business, it's say a hunting operation where I'm bringing clients to look at my bird dogs, walk behind my bird dogs for bobwhite quail with pin release birds. In addition to that, I may have a sporting clays range for shooting sports. And maybe some of the same hunters would do both. But describe this product so I can understand it, so anybody can understand it. So describe my product service in terms that anybody can understand it, and include what the features are of the product. Walk behind good gun dogs, have good flying birds to get good exercise outdoors, be able to shoot your shotgun over good English pointers. I mean, that's a feature, benefit that takes that person back to when he was walking with his grandfather or his dad, and he did that as a boy. She did that as a child. So it takes them back in time and gives them that experience again. That's the benefit of it. And where else can you go and get that? So I need to describe that. So what's the target market I'm looking at? What's that niche that my product and service, how is it going to line up to fit that niche? How my offerings different from local competition? Is someone down the road doing the same thing? Will that affect me? Or no one in this area is doing it? So think about that, and that can help guide my decision on starting the business. Look with your local people, governments, and your state government on any licensing regulations or permits that you may need. And then in this section, why would someone come and upland bird hunt on my property? Describe that. And that's important for me to think about in going through this business plan. Doing your business, doing your research on your market, and analyzing that information is important. I've noticed businesses don't do this, and I think it's important to do it. This can help you decide whether to start your business or not. Sometimes it can help you maximize your target market segment as well. Just think about your market that you're entering. So to describe the general state of this industry, what the trends are in the industry, what the future is in this type of service industry, to bringing people on my land. And it helps me focus my efforts to this target market. Describe my customer again. What's my customer base? Profile my target customer. Again, it'd be, say, older individuals that love to bird hunt and shoot the shotgun, are really interested in good gun dogs and they get outside in the sunshine and walk on pretty land behind gun dogs for chances to see upland game birds. I mean, that is what I'm selling, and describe that. And that's my customer base, that older individual that used to do that, that's interested in doing that. How am I going to get this hunting opportunity available to them? Looking at competition in the local area, I've already talked about that some, but in the state that I'm working in my region, are there other competitors that are similar to me? It may be that they actually bring more people in, so it's not a disadvantage to have some competition. But if I've got a shooting preserve right down the road from me, that may or may not be good. So think about your local competition. And so describe my competitive advantage to get my customer, my targeted customer, on my property. And then through that business, I can estimate what my cash flow will be, what my market share will be, how much business will I generate. Again, this market research and analyzing the analysis of this information is important. Part of this should be think about how you're going to get the word out. Many landowners that I've worked with just use word of mouth, and that's fine, and they do very good at that. And they're established businesses, and their land is established, and that works fine. But if you want to take the next step up, look at thinking about marketing plan with social media marketing, getting a website. How am I going to get the word out? And in that plan for marketing, and again, describe my product, what I'm offering, what my price structure is. One way to look at price, just two examples. What's it going to cost me to provide that service? And then I need to add some kind of percentage margin on top of that to make it wow for me, to make me have some income, revenue coming in. So cost plus basis pricing. And another way is to just look at competition offering similar services. What do they charge? So that can help you in your pricing structure. In your plan of action for your marketing, hit your key selling points, what makes me unique and why people want to come here to my property. Hit those points. Again, walking by good gun dogs, just like you used to with your dad. So that's a selling point. So think about how much I'm going to spend on advertising and how I'm going to advertise, developing a website, social media marketing, producing brochures, whatever that is, or the combination thereof, what my contact information is, and then in the marketing plan, again, what this plan is going to generate for me with sales. So that's important. Think through this. A next part of my thought process needs to be what's my operation plan look like? What my operating plan will be? What are my day-to-day activities I'm going to do with my outdoor recreational business, wildlife-related hunting business, for example? So day-to-day activities, where my location is, what facilities do I have? Again, some of that was done in your physical inventory of your assets on the land. What storage, buildings, equipment, storage, accommodations, houses to put people up, campsites, whatever that may be. Thinking about my facilities that I'm going to have to offer. What improvements that I need to make to those facilities. And then who's going to work this business. And again, we've talked about that. Again, important to think about it. Who's going to manage it? Am I going to manage it by myself, or I'll have others that will help me with this? One thing that's important to do, and I can give you some more information if you're interested, and please talk to your attorney about this, but the business structure, it doesn't make any sense, in my opinion, to operate as a sole proprietor. If something happens from a legal standpoint and I'm found liable and got somebody hurt, they can then sue me for my house and all my retirement and all my land and everything. So talk to your attorney about business structures. It just makes no sense to operate as a sole proprietor. Think about setting up corporations or limited liability corporations, LLCs, to structure your business. This can not only be good for economic cash flow to help you differentiate and separate those pools of revenue, but it also can help you from a liability standpoint as well. For example, if I own property and I'm offering a hunting lease, I could have a hunting lease LLC where I do the leasing operation out of that LLC. But the hunting lease LLC doesn't own my land. I have my land ownership through my land holding LLC. An attorney can help you set these up. And the leasing operation actually leases my land from the landholding LLC. That way, if something happened, I was negligent, I got somebody hurt, and I get sued and I'm found liable, they may get my tractor, my lodge, my hunting lodge, but they're not going to get the land because the leasing operation doesn't own the land. So just think about your business structure. Talk to your attorney. Think about it up front. It's better to think about that up front and go into it eyes open than try to fix a problem on the backside. So it's easier to set it up first. And again, get legal counsel on this. But back on the management team, who's the key personnel going to be? Me with my family, say, working it. How am I going to pay myself? That business structure, I talked about how you're going to own the property or own the business rather. And in preparing taxes, I may do that, or I may need some help with an accountant. So think through who's going to help me run the business. Now, finances are important. Being an ex-banker, I got to talk a little bit about that. Particularly, it's important, what available cash do I have, and what's the sources of that cash? Think about that up front, and hopefully have enough cash early on to help get my business on wheels. Startup expenses come without any revenues coming in early in my business life cycle. So having enough cash early helps me with that startup expenses. So think about what I'm going to have to get started. Do I have some existing debt that I need to be concerned about, or at least need to be knowledgeable of? How am I going to service that debt? And how does that fit in with my financial cash flow? Opportunity costs, meaning if I don't do this, if I don't do the NRE, I have opportunity costs of losing that revenue from the NRE, but I can also just put that money in a savings account or put it in mutual funds if I feel that's safer and less hassle. Again, think about that. There's opportunity costs for not doing a decision and sometimes doing a decision. So think through your financial situation in this plan. Documents that you need, again, back on your sales forecast. What's my projected sales going to be? I need to make some kind of guesstimation on that, and hopefully it'll increase over the years in the short run. Financial statements to give me what income stream I'm going to have in my business. Cash flow statements, this may be one of the more important ones. So my cash outflows in my business, what cash do I have coming in, and what cash do I have on hand to meet expenditures that arise. That's important to know this. So a cash flow analysis statement would be important. You can look that up in an accounting book or a finance book, and it kind of help you do that. I'm sure some of you have done that. But having a knowledge of my cash on hand through cash flow is important. Balance sheet, what my assets, liabilities, and then again what my equity is in my business. Important to have an idea, and you're doing some of that with the projections on your sales, and also with your physical inventory, your land that you have, your buildings, machinery. Again, those are assets. What loans do I have at liabilities, and then what equity do I have with the difference of the two? So important to have some of these, at least think through some of these statements that we've talked about would be important to do. Legal considerations are important. What I've found in working with landowners, that this scares them most of anything. They're worried about people coming on the property, getting hurt, and suing them for their land, losing the farm. In Mississippi, you don't have to make your land perfectly safe. In Mississippi code, it has reference to a landowner should be reasonable and prudent to make their land reasonably safe. If I've got hazards on the property, warn guests, warn people coming on the property as paying clients, warn them of those hazards, or better yet, remove those hazards. So that's being reasonable and prudent and documenting that I've done that. I just don't see a lot of judges in Mississippi looking to hang a landowner. They're more the fair-haired child, so to speak, that's open up their land for recreation. So I don't see a lot of courts looking to get them, judges after them. But if you do your homework up front to reduce hazards, document that, reduce hazards by eliminating hazards, document that, and showing that to your paying clients, that's important to do. Reduces your overall liability risk. So if you're doing a hunting lease, having a well-written lease, I've got some examples of those I can give you in publications that I've got if you contact me. But with a well-written lease, having an attorney review it, have it tied to your land and what activities these lessees will be doing, these hunters will be doing on the property, turkey hunting in the spring, whatever it is. In Mississippi, I encourage liability waivers. That's important to do, and how you do it, I think, is important. For example, if I'm bringing hunters in and get them up that morning and stick a liability waiver in front of them before we go out behind the dogs to shoot quail, pen release quail, that wouldn't be the way to do it. A judge wouldn't look good at that because I didn't give that hunter an opportunity to think about it. But if I'm got people booked months in advance, say to come to my property to hunt, sending them a package of information, and in there is a waiver that I want you to sign and return to me because that's the way I can keep my insurance costs down. That way that potential client guest can think about it and not sign it, not come, or yeah, that's no problem, I'll sign it and send it back. That's the way to do that, and I think in legal standing would be a fair way to do it. And insurance cost, if you've got insurance on an NRE, if you've got an existing NRE and on your land insurance, you'll notice, particularly with hunting leases, the insurance provider will ask, do you have waivers signed? So if you do, that's a way that they're going to price you differently. So that's being preemptive as a landowner, and they're going to give you typically a better insurance premium just by getting a waiver signed. So that's that shows, I think, some value of the waiver. Enforcing rules on the property, what they can and can't do. Again, it's important to talk to your guest about that, communicate. We've already mentioned insurance. One thing on insurance, like in hunting lease insurance, as a landowner getting insurance, you have insurance on your NRE land, your NRE operation. But if for example, if I'm leasing land to hunters and that hunting group may have a insurance policy to cover themselves, as a landowner, I can require them to name me as an additional insured party on their policy, and I'm not going to take their word for it. I want a copy of the certificate of the policy where I'm named as a landowner as the additional insured party. So that's another thing you can do to kind of cover yourself with liability. We've talked about business structure a little bit with LLC format, limited liability corporations, companies, and again, that's something to talk to your attorney about. Just makes common horse sense to me to do that. So what are the problems that I've seen, pitfalls, in not having a business plan? And I know landowners that will do NREs and not have a business plan and are successful, but it sure makes more sense to me. It's more practical, more planning in place to go through the process that we just talked about in the business plan, to think about how my business is going to operate, how is it going to be successful, and how am I going to adapt over time to make it better. So some common problems I see is not creating a plan. If I don't go through that process, chances are my failure rate will be higher. I mean, just no doubt of that. So going through a business model process, this business plan, will help me make my business more viable. Problem with not looking at your market research enough, not knowing what I'm getting involved in, looking at the industry and the trends and the customer base, for an NRE that I'm doing with agritainment, agritourism, corn maze. Not doing any of that, that can be a problem because, I'm going into uncharted waters if I don't do enough research. Not being objective and making assumptions. So as I would call it back in the banking world, too much blue sky in the outlook. So being objective with what I'm planning to do. How many customers I'm going to have? What will they pay me? What the sales forecast for my business? How I'm going to make it fit with my land operations. So all of that, being objective and making good assumptions is important to do, and being realistic with those assumptions. Not being thorough, not going through a planned process and with enough, not being thorough enough to go through that will lead to more chances of failure. So being thorough and thinking about the different components of this business plan will help your business be more successful. Lack of flow. Again, you don't have to be a literary giant or writer to write a business plan, but again, having this broken out into good sections with a good flow to it that makes sense to me, makes sense to a reader, that's important. So lack of flow can be a problem. From a financial standpoint, and this is true for any business, not having enough cash up front. Because you're going to have things that come up that you're just going to have cash outflow to cover those expenses. So having a buffer of cash is important early. And after your business gets on wheels and you start getting revenue in, then you can get over those rough times. But early in a business cycle is when most businesses fail because of lack of cash early. Diversification of services offered over time is important in getting started. It may be that I do hunting excursions at first, but as I get accustomed to doing that and have a customer base, then I could also venture out and offer some wildlife watching opportunities on the same property in another time of year, maybe even for some of those same clients that I'm bringing on to hunt or with new people. So diversifying over time is just a way to get more cash flow in, and it makes good sense to do that. Helps your business with your revenue intake. Remembering that with an NRE like we're talking about, having paying clients on your property for outdoor related recreation, you're in the entertainment business. People are wanting to come to see your land, wanting to meet you, wanting to talk to you. See, you're entertaining people. I've had people tell me, I'm thinking about doing farm tours and a corn maze and having people on the property, but I just don't like kids. I don't know if I want to have. I've had individuals tell me that, and I said, well, maybe we ought to think about this agritourism business a little bit different. It may not work if you don't like to deal with your client base, so that makes common sense. But with an NRE, having people on my property, I'm entertaining them, so I'm kind of in the entertainment business, whether I know it or not. So know that getting into this line of business. Work with what I have on the property, the assets that I have, the land types that I have. That can make me successful, and also differentiate what I offer as far as outdoor recreation and services that I offer. So working with what I got is important. Overall sustainability of my land and my natural resources on my property is important. NRE type businesses work hand in glove into that and help me improve the value of my land by making better decisions on land management practices to increase wildlife, for example. This sustains the resource and sustains my land value, increases my land values. So that's why business planning is important, to get wheels under my new NRE business or expand an existing business. If this is of interest to you, it can certainly enhance your income with this kind of line of business with NRE. It enhances conservation on the property, increases that natural resource value and capital and species that you have out there, enhances wildlife. It can also control access to the property, particularly for if I'm a landowner, don't live on my property. If I have a hunting lease on a property, I'm an absentee landowner, that hunting lease client, that lessee, will be my eyes on the ground to make sure people not coming on the property I don't want on the property. So again, these NRE type business help me control access to the property. So there's more eyes on the ground, and I'm there working it, for example, with a farm tool operation, or bird watching. So again, it controls who's out there, and that's important for landowners. It can also this business can promote land stewardship and retention. I've had landowners say, look, I just want to keep this property so I can give it to my kids' kids, and they can pass it on to the family. And so making ends meet financial wise, cash flow wise, revenue wise, these kind of businesses will increase your land value. You're a better land steward, and it can help me retain ownership of my property. This is my contact information here. You're free, and I encourage you to contact me at any time that I can be of service to you, talking through some of these things we talked about today, and helping you find additional resources and thinking through your business model. That last line there's my website. I have a lot of good information on that is free to you to download, and so you won't have to go find this kind of information. It's there available for you free at my website, and that's www.naturalresources.msstate.edu. So that use that website of mine as a good resource. I've enjoyed this presentation. I hope it's been beneficial to you, and I can help you in the future. Don't hesitate to give me a call and start and expand your NRE outdoor recreational business. Thank you.